Hello everyone, welcome to the Scumdog's Kennel. I'm your host, Chris Williams, and in today's Cryptid Corner mini-episode, I have a couple of accounts of people encountering Mothman or winged humanoid cryptids, folks. Both accounts are kind of terrifying because they both have room for demonic activity in them. Either way, the first article we'll be reading is Family Haunted by Possible Chicago Mothman Encounter in Des Plaines, Illinois, and read exactly what this family experienced. While we can't guarantee the silhouette of the Mothman, I feel like that's exactly what it is. There has been an overwhelming feeling of dread, fear, and uneasiness felt by all of us during the incidents. That was another brief excerpt from the actual story, folks, and as you can see, the family here was truly terrified. Either way, let's continue. Over the last few years, my family and I have consistently encountered some sort of creature in our home in Des Plaines, Illinois, 1700 block, Howard Avenue. Now, let's go back to the first one. I was about 16 years old, 23 now at the time, and I'll never forget it. I was sitting in my room when I heard an unforgettable growl from my window, followed by a distinct gust of air. Years passed, and I would think about it occasionally, but a few months ago, in February, my heart sank. Probably because it happened again, and maybe this time far more terrifyingly. It was far more, violent, perhaps. Well, that's just my idea, folks. I'm just trying to make this article a little more spooky. So, was this encounter getting more intense to the point it was going to become violent? Let's read on and find out. From my other window, I heard the growl, maybe not the exact one, but it brought back the same gut-wrenching feeling. My dog ran inside and ended up hiding under the bed, terrified. Tonight, June 6th, 2024, the growl came directly over our garage again, apparently from the same place as the last time. After talking to my dad, he had also heard it. The dog is once again hiding under the bed right now. So, whatever was there, folks, was so terrifying it actually scared the dog. That's something we've seen before in other accounts, not just with basically Mothman and demons, but also with, alien beings, where these animals either are dogs and cats or even basically farm animals. When the occasion does arise, folks, when something weird happens on a farm, they can sense these things. Almost like in various accounts of basically just before a Bigfoot, these animals react to it by becoming scared. So, it is indeed an interesting tidbit of information. But we'll get back to that after we finish off this story. While we can't guarantee the silhouette of the Mothman, I feel like that's exactly what it is. There's been an overwhelming feeling of dread, fear, and uneasiness felt by all of us during the incidents. JC. JC's story is indeed very terrifying, folks. Was this some sort of demonic encounter? Maybe, as I've said before, folks, maybe Mothman is indeed a demon. I'm not quite sure I believe that, folks, but in this case, maybe it is true. Either way, there's also a note, folks, so let's continue with that. Now, the witness lucidly described the emotions felt during the encounters. This is another example where the witness has Hispanic heritage, a fact that has occurred in a vast majority of the Chicagoland area winged humanoid encounters and sightings. Again, the heavy sounds of flapping wings, and in this instance, a growling sound accompanying the encounter. The location is approximately 1 mile northeast of O'Hare International Airport, and that is damning evidence, don't you think, folks? Because of all the Mothman sightings that have been taking place around, O'Hare International Airport in Chicago. So, maybe in this case, there is some relationship between the Chicago Mothman and, the cryptid or entity that this family is, seeing. Here's a map of the area where this sighting took place, folks. And as you can see, it's just, northeast of the sighting in just a little suburb or basically neighborhood that basically no one would probably think that anything weird would happen. So you can see, folks, it's just right there. And as you can see, here's another map of the area. And as I said, it's part of Chicago where all of these weird sightings of Mothman have basically been happening, as well as other encounters with winged cryptid humanoids and other weird phenomena, I would imagine, as well, is also taking place, folks. Do you suppose Chicago has become a window area? I use that a lot, folks, to describe how all these sightings and weird happenings happen in some areas. Maybe Chicago, due to the fact that it's basically near one of the Great Lakes, which is known as basically a magnet for weird phenomena. And do you suppose that it's turned Chicago into such a window area? Maybe. Either way, let's move on to the next article. Teen girl observes terrifying pale gargoyle during sleepover, and hear how this, girl and her friends and family dealt with it, folks, because it's a very terrifying account and gives you the idea that maybe, the entity in it is indeed some kind of demonic entity. Either way, let's read this brief blurb from it and then get into the full account. I looked up to see a tall, dark figure crouching on the counter like a gargoyle, holding itself up with one arm on the cabinet above. I immediately closed my eyes. Terrifying, isn't it, folks, if you were basically wake up and see that? But let's read the full account now. When I was 12, I went to a sleepover. It was a huge gathering of 20 young girls in a one-bedroom apartment, so I slept with a blanket on the kitchen floor. During the night, I woke up. I looked up to see a tall, dark figure crouching on the counter like a gargoyle, holding itself up with one arm on the cabinet above. I immediately closed my eyes, and as I said, if you woke up to that, folks, you'd probably start screaming, because this thing looks like the devil. At least that's what I would basically presume most people would think is exactly who and what this entity is. But the fact that it resembles the Mothman, as I said, folks, like the last account, does that maybe paint the Mothman as a demonic entity? As I said before, I have my doubts. There's a lot to do with the Mothman and the encounters and stories to do with it that really feel that it has nothing to do with demonic activity at all. But in these accounts, well, it gives you the feeling that maybe what was heard and seen was some sort of demonic entity. But as I said, I think there's a difference. Maybe it's possible that the Mothman in these accounts is maybe a demon taking the form of the Mothman to basically frighten these people. But that's all conjecture, and we can talk about that after we finish off this article, and then talk about this story and the one we read before. So let's continue. After a few minutes, I decided to open my eyes again. It was standing at my feet, looking down at me. At that point, I believe I saw it had pale or white skin, but I don't remember any facial features. I squeezed my eyes shut again and kept them shut until I felt the sunlight on my face. I felt cold and sick. I texted my mom to pick me up and left before anyone woke up. This was not a dream, though it could have been a hallucination. I have never hallucinated before or since. I don't believe it was sleep paralysis. I just think I was frozen in fear. D. I have to say I agree with D here, folks, because, well, it sounds like she could actually move around and it was only fear that froze her because she was afraid if she moved or yelled out, this thing would attack her. I myself have basically had one bout of sleep paralysis in my life and I couldn't move. But after a little while, I was able to move again after basically working my body into a frenzy because it basically more or less made me angry. I wasn't afraid like she was, folks. I'm not saying that she didn't have a right to be afraid because what she saw was definitely something that would probably frighten everyone else who basically encountered it. Either way, there's an update on this story, folks, so let's continue. The girl hosting moved away and we lost touch. Her father spent time in jail for assaulting one of her friends. The figure was tall in an inhuman way and very thin. The father looked nothing like this. One of his daughters died tragically 10 years later. In remembering her, we told stories and I shared this one. Her friend told me she always said something dark followed her dad around. I have never experienced anything like this 16 years later. Who or what did I see? D. Indeed. What was this entity, folks? Was it a demonic being? Maybe one of the Mothman? Because it was maybe there basically studying these young children because it was some sort of alien being. Out on, I don't know, some sort of scientific sabbatical, perhaps? I don't know. We don't have enough information. All we know is that I believe most of these witnesses, folks. There's a possibility that they are lying, but for the most part, I think these people do want reassurances that what they've seen is indeed real. Now, it could be a hallucination, but I don't know. These things, I do think, these signs are indeed real, folks. At least a good portion of them. Indeed, folks, there are some that probably are hoaxes or just outright lies, but I do believe that these things do happen. So, what was this entity, as well as with the first story we read through, folks? What are these entities? Are they actually aliens or are they demons? Or some sort of interdimensional interlopers? Until we get more information and basically verify what they actually are, we can only wonder. Anyway, folks, we're at the end, so please go subscribe to my YouTube channel, Read Comics They're Bad For You. Hit that like button for me. Make sure you're still subscribed. Leave some comments down below. Hit that bell for notifications. Hit the part of the bell that will give you all future notifications, and please share this video out. I'm Chris Williams from the Scumdog's Kennel. Thank you all for joining me. I'll be back again tomorrow with another great video, so be sure to come back again then. Till next time, folks, I'll see you all again soon.